So what biological advantage would you cite in order to ban trans women for participating in beauty pageants? I don't think there are any, unless you think that trans women are just inherently hotter than cis women, which I might agree with you there, but I don't think that you would want that to be your take, considering all of the transphobic shit that people like this will say about trans women. Oh, it's so obvious, we can always tell. Like, clearly, if you think that trans women can never be as beautiful as cis women, then they should actually be at a disadvantage in these pageants, and why would you seek to not include them at that point either? Unless you, one, are purposefully irrational because you're malicious and just want to stop trans people from being able to exist in public life, or two, you have a poorly disguised fetish that you should probably work through, potentially with a mental health professional, to not have it be a fetish anymore, and just understand that you find trans women to be attractive. A dude won Miss Netherlands. The women need to just walk out. Don't compete with guys who do this. Same in sports, just refuse to compete with the guys if they invade your sport. Make them race alone. And why exactly should trans women not be allowed in beauty pageants? Exactly. Why are beauty pageants gender segregated to begin with? You know, it's an interesting question. Because the reason given for why a variety of other sports or competitions are gender segregated are supposed biological advantages that one sex may have over the other. Now, of course, this ignores a really nuanced conversation in the trans people in sports discourse that nobody who is against the inclusion of trans women in sports understands nor care to understand, because they don't care at all about women's sports broadly, regardless of if there are trans or cis women participating. They only care about utilizing the trans sports discourse in order to gain an into being transphobic more broadly. And this is not anything new. I've said this before on stream. The idea is, it's kind of similar to the right-wing civil rights ladder dilemma, where if you can solidify oppression against trans people in one way, you can use that as precedent for oppressing them in another way. And that's kind of what the GOP, the Republican Party, and conservatives broadly in this country and across the pond have done. Effectively, unfortunately, in some ways, in some states, where they will take the trans sports issue, and then, because it's a very complex and nuanced conversation, you know, in my view, so if it's like a combat sport, for instance, maybe the person could be on HRT for longer and get their T levels tested and all this kind of shit. But I don't actually care that much, frankly, at all. I don't. I'll leave that up to the people, hopefully in concert with medical professionals and scientists who study the issue, to come up with the rules and regulations around that to make it a more meritocratic system, even though sports generally are not exceptionally meritocratic. You can look at Michael Phelps, who is literally a merman, whose biological advantages are not only because he was born male, but because of a variety of genetic things that are anomalous to him, in the fact that his wingspan is fucking huge. His legs are, I think, short, where his torso is long. Even, like, the webbing between his fingers are apparently, like, more webbed than other people's. Like, he is a merman. So he has a biological advantage over other cis men that he's competing against. So the idea that sports generally is just meritocratic in a general sense is stupid. Obviously, it takes effort, skill, work, labor to get good at the thing you're doing, but it is also a lot of luck in terms of your genetics. So that's the conversation around sports that require physical exertion against other people, like combat sports, like other kinds of things like that, right? And we can leave that up to, you know, scientists and professionals to figure all that shit out at the highest levels of play. When it comes to the youth in sports, so particularly trans girls in girls' sports in school, that's some stupid bullshit. Because a lot of the so-called biological advantages that biological men have only become present at puberty and after puberty. So if it's very young sports, there is literally no reason to gender segregate it. And if you have a trans person who has not undergone the puberty as it pertains to their biological sex, they go on puberty blockers and eventually go on an estrogen puberty. if they're a trans girl, because nobody cares about trans men in sports. Not in as serious of a way as they do about trans girls anyway. Then those people are not going to have the biological advantages that would come from the AMAB puberty, right? Because they're not having an AMAB puberty. So, like, there are so many ways to solve for this issue that don't involve banning. But they want the bans because it allows them to use the bans against trans youth in sports and eventually trans women in older adult sports. They use that as precedent in order to ban people from other things, to ban trans people from doing other stuff. That's the entire point, right? And this has been used against other marginalized demographics throughout history. It is a very, very obvious and studied phenomenon and playbook on the part of conservatives and right-wingers who wish to bind the out-group and protect the in-group. So that's the argument for those kinds of sports. So what biological advantage, then, would you cite in order to ban trans women for participating in beauty pageants? I don't think there are any. Unless you think that trans women are just inherently hotter than cis women. Which, I might agree with you there, but I don't think that you would want that to be your take. But that kind of is the only take you could get. In fact, trans women should theoretically have a disadvantage in beauty pageants, especially considering all of the transphobic shit that people like this will say about trans women. It's so obvious, we can always tell, you look like a gorilla. Like, clearly, if you think that trans women can never be as beautiful as cis women, then they should actually be at a disadvantage in these pageants, and why would you seek to not include them at that point either? Unless you, one, are irrational and purposefully irrational because you're malicious and just want to stop trans people from being able to exist in public life, which is the likely scenario, or two, you have a poorly disguised fetish that you should probably work through, potentially with a mental health professional, to not have it be a fetish anymore, and just understand that you find trans women to be attractive. That's also a good idea, I think, right? Maybe. I don't know. And this is also similar to that video we did about that person who was really mad about a team that had trans women on it who won in a women's division League of Legends competitive game. So to briefly rehash, the entire reason why you would have a women's division in competitive esports is primarily not because of any biological advantage of, cis men being better than cis women at esports, because that's stupid, but because of the fact that video games have been marketed specifically to boys and men for a long-ass time, to the point where it's allowed for the festering of a lot of misogyny in competitive sports, be it like people like randos just playing on ladder, and also competitive esports, like competitive leagues, and that has built up and allowed for a buildup of an ecosystem of misogyny that makes it less likely that women will participate because they don't want to have to deal with all that shit. Not only in the competitive scene, but also in like the casual competitive scene, which is grinding ladder. Because if you get on any game that has voice chat and you have a feminine sounding voice, you're gonna hear some shit. It's also the same, frankly, if you have a ethnic minority sounding voice and accent as well. That's why there are separate divisions. Also, there's a lot of misogyny in esports organizations and in their hiring or drafting practices as well, which makes women and feminine people less likely to be chosen. In addition to just the fact that there aren't as many, women and trans femmes participating in competitive sports. But there's no actual reason to gender segregate these things. The reasons why there are gender segregated women's only leagues is specifically because of the fact that there aren't as many. And it still allows for those women to participate in competitive sports, which is a good thing. But the thing is that the actual pro leagues in esports are not actually gender segregated. You can be a woman and participate in regular ass esports. It's just there are so few of them because it's kind of a boys' club because of a variety of stupid-ass reasons that we're hoping to undo. There's no advantages here. But obviously, this is just giving the game away about what their actual intentions are, which is the eradication of trans people from public life. They don't want to see trans people anywhere. That's the entire point. They tell you that themselves by hyping up people like Michael Knowles because he's literally scraping the bottom of the barrel for relevancy and is making fucking genocidal statements like that in order to generate buzz around his name and get fucking clicks. And you'll have everybody else on the right hype up that idea of a so-called eradication of transgenderism, and you just tell on yourselves because you can't help yourself because you're so mentally deluded that you can't even keep the dog whistles in place. You can't even keep the mask on anymore because you're so emboldened by the fact that, for one, this platform that we're currently looking at is literally owned by a white supremacist anti-Semite, either Nazi sympathizer or outright Nazi because of the people that he surrounds himself with, Elon Musk. But also generally because they're consolidating very, very early around this issue, which doesn't actually seem to be an electoral winner, but still allows for them in a variety of local and state governments that Republicans control to legislate oppression against people, essentially to distract their voter base from the fact that they're cutting taxes for the wealthy, making the average Joe work more hours for less pay and worse working conditions, etc., etc. That's all it is. The main reason poker series have ladies events, it's mostly just to build up women's participation in the game. Obviously, it has nothing to do with skill differences. Yeah, exactly. Also, I forget, maybe we could find it, or somebody in chat could find it. I seem to remember there being, maybe this was about age, actually, and not gender identity, but that there are a lot of fucking women that play video games now compared to what it used to be. And also, apparently, one of them that I'm thinking of is that the average age of the video gamer nowadays is actually like in their 30s or something, because a lot more people are just playing video games now, and also the people that grew up in the video game boom are now in their 30s and 40s and whatnot. But I seem to remember that there's also more and more women and girls that are playing video games as well, which, in my opinion, is a good thing, because the more the merrier. Why not? There are tons of sports where they're pointlessly gendered too. Yeah, because it's just a tradition. For one, it's a misogynistic idea of cis women being inherently inferior to cis men, which is not true. But also, they want that idea to stick into broader society, and gender segregating a variety of sports is a good way to do that, right? A lot of people don't really think about why sports are gender segregated, especially the ones where it makes literally zero sense. And they just rely on this internalized, misogynistic, and patriarchal idea that cis women are inherently inferior to cis men, which is clearly not true. Now, it might be the case that trans women are inherently superior to cis men, but that's a conversation for another day. Dickheads in online games would literally throw ranked matches just to be mean to random women on their team. Yeah, no, it's self-destructive in many ways. Not just in that very small instance. Did you mean cis women? No, I meant trans women are inherently superior than cis men. I think that's true. And we have a lot of data to back that one up. That was a joke. Are NB superior at video games? Yes, non-binary people invented video games. That's why Link from Legend of Zelda is a trans-mask non-binary king. Actually true. Gamer demographic chart from fucking some study that CDRCH is listed. Ipsos? Okay. Gamers by gender. So I don't really believe that gender exists, and I'm not too sure if gamers exist, but we've got a list of them here. So it seems like, wow, it's a lot of males playing video games, and whoa, oh shit, we're getting closer. And now it's an ebb and flow, and right now we're at another increase. You should have bought the dip right here, I think, because it seems like we're going to continue to go upward a little bit if the trends remain. And then you can sell high later on and make a fucking fortune. Note the Gamergate era? Yeah. But yeah, it's very funny. Apparently, men are better at being women than women. Hashtag feminism. But this is what you believe, is it not? If you believe that trans women shouldn't be allowed in beauty pageants, and you believe, because you're delusional, that trans women are men actually, then that's literally what you believe, right? That's the justification you're using for your transphobia, for excluding trans women in beauty pageants. This is literally what you believe. And it's not feminism that's making you think this, it's the opposite, actually. Feminism would make it so that you don't think this. But of course, it's Twitter, and it's essentially $8 Chan now. And it's just a right-wing echo chamber, which is why it's very boring nowadays. 100% predictable, brother. Just say you think trans women are hot. You don't have to mask it in this, air of transphobia. This is a hot take that I have no data for, but it's just a feeling I have. And if we're arguing with right-wingers, feelings are fair game, okay? You don't need to use logic, reason, studies, anything like that, the Socratic method even. You could just go off of your feelings, because we're talking about right-wingers here, so you might as well play in the mud and use their own methods against them. I just have a feeling that a lot of transphobic men aren't actually that transphobic. Like, for one, they haven't thought it through enough to, like, be solidly transphobic, because it's illogical, it's irrational. If you did think it through, you wouldn't be transphobic anymore. But also, I think a lot of them are just going along to get along. And what I mean by that is, I think a lot of them have seen trans women out there, and they find them to be kind of attractive. Because, nobody gives a fuck about gender identity. When it comes to who they're attracted to, they care more about physical aesthetic attributes, right? So, cis men who are heterosexual are often more attracted to femininity than the genitalia, chromosomes, or gametes that a cis woman might have, right? It's just that cis women are more likely to be expressing femininity in their aesthetics, so those are the people that are more likely to be found attractive by those cisgender heterosexual men. But the thing is, you can have trans women who pass exceptionally well, and frankly, non-passing trans women are very hot, in my opinion. That's just me. I'm woke, I guess, in that I am awake. I have woken up to the fact that all women are attractive. However, to stick to this point, there are going to be some men who are like breeders, and that's their kink, and they want to have children with the person they love, and they're not okay with surrogacy or adoption. We may have transplant wombs in the future, so stay tuned. However, at the current moment, if you literally want to impregnate a person with a womb, you're going to have to find a trans man or a cis woman, unfortunately, but we'll get there. If you're not okay with surrogacy or adoption, because you're weird. I'm not so self-important to the point where I think I need my specific strain of DNA and genetic code to be carried on in the world. If I ever have kids, which I'm not the biggest fan of the idea, I'm gonna adopt or have a surrogate. I made this decision when I was like fucking 20, all right? Or younger even. Because I just don't care enough about having kids. And I can't afford to have a kid right now, even if I wanted to. But I think that's what it is anyway. I think a lot of dudes find trans women attractive, but because of their other politics, the fact that they are conservative in their ideology in a variety of other ways, like their economic policy they support, or like their religiosity, etc., I think they just go along with the transphobia to essentially look good to the people around them, to not be ostracized by the people around them who are also subject to the same problem. Now, of course, there are going to be a lot of men out there that are actually just transphobic and are essentially just terrible people with bad taste, and that's going to happen, right? But I think a lot of these people are not that. I think a lot of them are secret chasers, and they just don't want to admit it because they don't want this social repercussion that they keep in place and help reinforce to come back onto them. I think there's actually, I don't know if I liked it on Twitter or if it was somewhere else, but there's actually a recent study that I saw, or rather like data collection of porn searches for trans women. I think it's not on, I think it might have been on Threads. Can you see your own likes on Threads? I don't think so. Wait, can you see your own likes? Bruh. Wait, hide likes. What does that mean? I don't have likes hidden. Where do I find the... I saw that on Twitter. Yeah, no, I remember seeing it. I just don't know where the fuck it is. It's not in my likes on Twitter. I don't think. Anyway, it seems like a lot of the conservative states are searching for a lot of trans porn. So a lot of the states that are some of the most transphobic, at least in their local governments and state governments, in the policies they're pushing and also the professed political views of the people in those states, they're searching for a lot of trans porn. And basically, the response to that is, get fucking real, brother. Get real. Unleash yourself from the shackles that you have imposed on yourself and on your fellow man, okay? Take the red pill, and see what the world actually is. See it for how it actually is and not how the people around you would want you to see it and are trying to force you to see it. Get fucking real. See, this is the problem with Threads. I can't make segments off of random shit I'm seeing on Twitter off of Threads because they don't have a fucking desktop client yet. $1 billion company, by the way. Suck my fucking dick. Break Meta up. Hello, GTM. Oh, yeah. Yeah, here it is. The Real Red Wave. Transgender porn Google search popularity by metro area. Makes you think. Huh. So the more is red, the less is blue. Huh. So, of course, my state of Washington, Seattle being the trans mecca of the United States of America, pretty good. Goddamn, Nevada really likes their dolls. What the fuck? That's crazy. You got goddamn Arizona and New Mexico. You got a bunch of pieces of Texas. There's like literal no man's land here as well. So. Look at these. Look at the South, man. That's crazy. What really need the Midwest, the upper Midwest, they got to get their shit together. You got to pump those numbers up. What are you doing? The worst is well, I guess the best, huh? It might be like top of Louisiana. What the fuck is above Louisiana? This is Oklahoma. Arkansas or Kansas? One of the two. It's hard to tell because of the way this mosaic is looking. Tennessee is very... For the state that's trying to do the most when it comes to anti-trans shit, or one of them anyway. Goddamn. That's crazy. Well, of course, Florida's into the trans woman. Makes sense. Listen, if there was a civil war between trans porn enjoyers and less enjoyers, the enjoyers would win. So, at least going off of this data... The Midwest is the searching for trans porn less stronghold. But it's not that they're not searching for it. It's just they're searching for it less. And part of that is because nobody lives in Montana. Nobody lives in the Dakotas, you know? Nobody lives in Nebraska. Didn't realize Republicans gerrymander based on chaser demographics. It's the tried and true method, man. First part is they base the reality on the porn they see, which is probably why they sexualize something so much, or everything so much. Yeah, that's probably true. There's probably something going on there. Maybe Freud had something to say about that. The only reason most of the Midwest isn't on the map, they still use magazines for porn. Yeah, their local Blockbuster is still supplying their video porn as well.